Akihabara. After the war, this district of Tokyo became known as the Electric Town due to all the electronics sold there. Radios, televisions or cameras, Akihabara had it all. But then came the 80s and the Japanese economic bubble went. In a market downturn, consumers are naturally laid back with their spending, apart from one specific group. So it happened that Akihabara's target audience started shifting towards a demographic who would happily eat cup noodles for a month if it meant they could buy their favorite waifu merchandise.
Otaku.
Nowadays, Akihabara can be considered the centerpiece of the otaku subculture. Numerous cosplay restaurants such as Maid cafes, figurine, manga, game and other hobby shops decorate the streets, and it is even home to the popular idol group Akiba 48. In some circles it will even be known as the Mecca of otaku. Given that, it is easy to see why game series like Persona and Digimon will want to set their games against the backdrop of this cultural phenomenon. After all, the Venn diagram of the audiences is probably a circle. Now, it's important to note that Akihabara is only one of many locations in both Digimon and Persona. But what if you had the whole game just fixated on this single region of Tokyo? As for the gameplay, well, we all know what the otaku want, so why don't we just turn the fanservice dial up to 10? This is Akiba's trip, Undead and Undressed, the title with the world's most carefully placed apostrophe. The game begins with a scrolling text about Akihabara, offering a bit of background information on the district, then delving into some rumors that have been going around. Rumors like special service maid cafes, backstreet monsters, Virgin to Fairy stories, and shady job offers. You'll then be thrown into a rather lengthy dialogue with this butler cafe escapee here. You're tied to the table and men with gas masks surround you. How did we get ourselves into this situation? Well, you heard the rumors about the job offering that pays in rare character goods, figurines and books. That was good enough for our protagonist here, and they signed up, only to be injected with some shady syrup that turned them into a synthester.
NANI?!
Synthesters are one of the main factions in Akiba's trip. They're vampires that need to be stripped of their clothes because they're weak to sunlight, and it's a Japanese game. And now our protagonist is one of them. The premium butler cafe experience is rudely interrupted by some girl wanting to kidnap us from the kidnappers. This gives us the chance to introduce combat. The core of the combat is relatively standard brawler. You have light attacks and heavy attacks and can target either the head, torso or the legs. You can block light attacks forever if you choose to, but heavy attacks will leave you with
emotional damage!
Successful blocks can be followed by counterattacks. There are 4 types of weapons, each with their own movesets and animations. And there are some special weapons as well. You can wield boxing boxes, wooden swords, comics, laptops, umbrellas, huge leagues, bats, motherboards, guitars, guns, bags, magic wands and everything in between. The animations are not interruptible, so the combat may feel sluggish at first. It took me a long time to get used to it. There is undoubtedly some depth to combat and equipment, although admittedly in the beginning it mostly goes as usual. Bigger number better. Now, there's another part to combat that is very much unlike any other brawler and more akin to some spicier games Japan has to offer. As mentioned before, enemies need to be exposed to sunlight to turn them into purple gas and definitely not kill them. Alternatively, they'll run away and probably report you to the police if they're just normal humans. So in order to succeed, we're stripping everybody naked.
I thought for some reason she'd be a little more relaxed at the beach.
By targeting different body parts, you inflict damage to the clothing item, covering that area. Once the clothing item has been damaged enough, you can try to strip it off the enemy, either by tearing it apart.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
Or once you become skilled enough, you can grab it off the enemy cleanly and take it for yourself. Sorry, I should use the proper terminology here. Yoink it. The exploration camera worked wonders, but there were certain fighting scenes where camera actively worked against me, making me very much confused. Interestingly, there's a jump mechanic in the game, which Japanese developers usually avoid like hellfire. Unfortunately, it doesn't offer much actual functionality, but hey, it's always fun jumping around town. The game is centered around Akihabara and is living its best life in that little haven of Tokyo. The world is not huge by any means, but it feels very much alive with the vibrant storefronts and constant crowds. There are frequent mini-events where you either get bothered for money by the local lowlifes or get nudged into Maid cafes and end up spending copious amounts of money for crappy ketchup art house food and playing word games with the maids. Numerous stores spread around the streets all have different vibes illustrated by their realistic backgrounds, banging background music, and employees ranging from salaryman to chibi mascots. You have clothing stores, electronic stores, school hobby shops, and you may think you're checking out a store manned by a regular employee, but next scene he has magically turned into a cute anime girl. Shopping for clothes is a viable and fun strategy if you want to keep your dignity intact and don't like to be bullied by the game over screen. Or just focus on cosplaying on who you want to be. That's mostly what I did. Even on the hard or gamer difficulty, the game is usually pretty forgiving. You can also find many of the aforementioned weapons in the shops, although I would like for better weapons to be sold. I found almost all of my weapon upgrades off enemies. You can also shop for items that power you up, giving increased experience, defense, attack or luck. Alternatively, buy your power-ups from various cafes around town. They are a bit cheaper but only affect that specific area. Not a mechanic I used often, but it was a great change of pace when I actually could put it to use. After all, going to a curry restaurant with a gorilla mascot and a theme song just to eat 9 portions of curry to get the power up you want is more immersive than simply using a hot guide cushion from your inventory. Speaking of items, everything is beautifully flavored around the otaku culture. CDs, cup ramens, game pads and so on. The developers really committed to the setting. There is a single caveat to it though. Much like Genshiken is a series of, by and for the otakus of the early to mid 2000s, Akiba Strip is in a similar situation. It was originally released in 2011 as just Akiba Strip. Akiba Strip Undead and Undressed is a sequel to the first game, but shares the same world, meaning that the virtual Akihabara was created over 10 years ago. There are various real advertisements in the game, and while it is one of the few examples where in-game ads work wonderfully within the setting and the universe, they are all from the distant year of 2013. You get trailers for PS3 games and anime that were at best released in 2013. When strolling around town, you are given flyers for real-life establishments around Akihabara. We can take our pick from tons of ramen shops, an international school, Steve Jobs caricatures, Maid cafes, Sengoku cafes and police cafes, and gambling, which by the way is illegal in Japan, unless it's the holy spirit of pachinko. Seeing as quite a few shops are marked as out of business, I wouldn't plan my trip to Arise no Kakurega, whatever that is. But it's certainly fun to browse through this frozen moment of time. You can tell right away that these ads are not of our time by the absolute lack of both VTubers and gacha games, which dominate the market these days. Unless you are stupid enough to mod them in. Yet another small bit of world building thrives around the streets of Akihabara. These are Itasha, which translates to painful or cringeworthy car, And it's exactly what it sounds like. Take your favorite waifu, your favorite car, and combine them in MS Paint. Beast on the streets, alone in the sheets. Who am I kidding? Anybody who has the confidence to drive one of those around has no performance problems whatsoever. The world of Akiba strip feels very much alive. It has a surprising amount of people on the screen at once, either during battles or when just walking around town. Faraway NPCs are rendered as toilet signs, but if you approach them, they turn into digital flesh and bones. You can choose to attack anybody, but there might be consequences. People will like you less if you attack normal people indiscriminately. You can tell normal people from Sindisters by taking photos. Normal people don't vibrate if you take a photo of them. Police patrol the streets and will hunt down instigators, either you or NPCs. Don't be fooled by their innocent look either. They're probably mechas piloted by some Japanese teenagers. Because they're built like a tank and hit like a truck. On the bright side, they won't fully undress you. Japanese police etiquette will see that your dignity remains intact and will keep one item of clothing on you. Unfortunately, the rest needs to go. Also, you will be arrested. You had to pay a fine, but you also get the opportunity to flirt with a nice police lady. Do it enough times and who knows what might sprout from the wings of needless violence. Normal humans will be standing around, hovering in the air, or scrolling Twitter, the in-game social media. It's just like Twitter, except good. Twitter gives you insight into the events of the world and the history of Akihabara, making it an invaluable world-building resource. The users react to your in-game actions, giving updates once you have grown your legend in some way, such as eating like a true American. Alright, so
Why are we fighting?
who are the Sintisters really? If you're a vampire but pretend to be a zombie, is it cultural appreciation? Turning back into the opening, we escape the captivity of the butler with the help of Shizuku, who is revealed to be a night eater.
よろしくね。
They're ancient vampires, much like Sintisters, but they're the good ones, fighting Sintisters behind the scenes. Through the power of a kiss, she makes you her familiar, giving you the combined powers of both Sintisters and Night Eaters. This marks the beginning of our fight against the bad vampires, spanning huge corporations, secret plans, eccentric characters, betrayals, and more. Honestly, the story doesn't take itself too seriously, and it doesn't have to. It's more of a backdrop to the whole package, giving us a reason to run around Akihabara, helping people out of their clothes. The main character has a peculiar group of friends, a childhood friend, a smart guy and his dumb brother, a sister and Oji's son running their base of operations / bar, and a Finnish maid, Kati Räikkönen. Later on, an old lady who is a CEO of a company will also join the cast. She is 26 by the way, but it's anime years, so... Finally, there's an idol singer, looks 15, acts 15, he's actually 150.
ちょっと待て150年前ってお前らいくつなんだよ
リンの公式年齢は15歳ですわ
None of the characters stand out as particularly interesting or memorable, but again, they don't have to be. Akiba trip is an experience more akin to actually taking a trip somewhere. You often don't remember the specifics such as what you ate or who robbed you in a shady side alley. But you'll remember the overall warm, fuzzy feeling of a good memory. The game behaves in a similar way, whilst nothing is particularly impressive. The whole package comes together nicely so that you leave the virtual Akihabara smiling. It's also worth mentioning that the localization is very well done. Characters often banter back and forth and the dialogue usually doesn't miss a beat, bringing over the meaning and tone rather than a straight translation. There are also some references which I suspect weren't there in the original release.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious.
And don't call me Shirley.
Throughout the Akiba adventures, numerous side quests pop up. Whilst they are not hugely important to the overall story, they are often vivid and fun experiences. There's a modern Romeo and Juliet side quest where you need to beat up both families so that the couple could run away together. You'll also deal with drunks, housewives, maids, cursed video cards, cults, multi-level marketing scams and more, all of which fit into the Akihabara picture nicely. At one point, some guys won't talk to you if you're not a cute girl, which you can't really become organically before New Game Plus unlocks that option, so you unlock crossdressing. Between all the quests, there are more activities for you to do. There's a whole combat arena with a charming, ambiguously gendered leader.
あら、申し遅れたけど、私はここの管理人よ。アントワネットって呼んでね。
You can climb up the tier ladder from F to S and need to fight groups of schoolgirls, bears, butlers, magical girls and more to rise to the ultimate challenge of fighting the leader themselves. The arena offers both a decent challenge and decent rewards. But if stripping in arena-based environments is not your thing, you can try out Akiba Squad Strippism, a whole in-universe arcade game where you need to defend some pillars in the middle of the street. That one was really easy to beat, but there's another hidden arcade game. Approach the game console laying on a random table in the bar. Doing so will allow you to play in Adrenaline. It may look like a mobile game, but don't be fooled. It's definitely made by From Software. You can seek consolation from your sister who has converted spending time with her into a minigame. It's cryptic, but there's a hidden 7x7 grid that you can move horizontally or vertically, although the direction of the movement is completely randomized. A small cutscene plays at the end. Innocent stuff like patting her head, batting with her or sleeping with her. Racing aside, nothing really happens, but you do get a set of towels as a reward for some family-friendly relaxation.
Feels like I'm wearing nothing at all. Nothing at all. Nothing at all.
Probably the most memorable side quest of all is about taking on the wall of Akiba 48. You literally need to beat 48 idols one by one. This one took me hours on the gamer difficulty I chose for my first playthrough, but it was rewarding seeing all the Bansu on the ground after I had beaten them all. Until I discovered there's a part 2 that's even worse.
行きますわよ。
Speaking of panties, there are finisher moves in the game. If you completely strip multiple enemies at once, you get the opportunity to strip them to their birthday suit, which is super embarrassing for them. This also allows you to acquire the underwear for your own use.
あら？
Personally, I prefer buying underwear to stealing it from some randoms on the street, but you do you. This is also the part of the video where I tell you about the greater symbolism behind the totally not sex sells mechanic of stripping.
Actually, if you watch the show, the boob window on her suit is clearly satirical. It's a meta-commentary on human sexuality, and also it serves as a metaphor.
Jokes aside, one of the central themes of the game is just being yourself and being happy with yourself. But also, either way, the game does not discriminate. Men and women get stripped equally, and you can set your phone's wallpaper to a stripped old Japanese businessman if you're so inclined. Something I'd also like to applaud is that while the stripping mechanism is already bordering on the creepy spectrum, the developers generally handle it well. They don't push it too far with either the age of the characters or the situations the characters get put in. I remember one side quest about stalkers, but we got to beat their butts for some poetic vigilante justice. Now, for some godforsaken reason, the developers made the main character 17. Interestingly, there's an adult story in the game, but if you try to enter it, you'll get kicked out immediately. But stripping thousands of people to full nudity, that's just a normal Japanese teenager. Akiba strip also includes a follower system, allowing you to take one of the core characters along you on your adventures. You can dress up your companions however you see fit, down to the privatest details. Whatever you like. At the beginning of the game, you can even change the hairstyles and complexion of the girls, or even completely replace them. Personally, I changed some of the hairstyles of the girls, but it ended up bothering me. The 2D cutscene sprites understandably do not reflect these changes, and the difference ended up jarring me. They sometimes comment on things, but mostly just help you during fights.
Woo! Superhero landing! Yeah, that's really hard on your knees.
Their helpfulness depends on where you are in the game. They are very efficient at the start, but tend to fall off later on. Unless you equip them with upgraded weapons, in which case they can blow through the fight by themselves, albeit slower than if you do it yourself. My absolute favorite follower feature is the finisher move though. Fill up the special attack meter and you can unleash the fury of your companion on one enemy. You'll inflict big damage on the enemy and there's always a fun cutscene to spice it up. While some other games rob you for the canonically accurate outfits, Akiba Strip gives you everything.
For free?
The game boasts amazing customization options. I already went over the different weapon types, but there are so many weapons and clothing items. This video has had 29 unique clothing sets in it, I think. My brain's not high enough resolution to reliably count that high. During my New Game Plus playthroughs, I had to spend minutes and minutes emptying out my inventory as it was getting near the limit of hundreds of items. Anything you see an NPC wearing, you can own and use. Anything you own, you can upgrade to the Imperial Divine Holy Armored Dragon God level or whatever the highest tier in your standard JRPG is. This means that for the most part you can easily look however you want and use whatever combat style you want, as long as you're willing to invest a bit of time keeping it upgraded. You can unlock stripping styles such as telekinesis or drunken fist, and even walking styles. Personally, I'm partial to cosplaying a Japanese salaryman that just can't stop scrolling bitter. You can do the same for your follower as well, so if you want you can do this. Or form a street talk gang, or do anything you want, the possibilities are endless. If you love customization mechanics like me, you'll undoubtedly have a good time hanging around Akihabara, shopping, stripping for clothes, clearing the arena for fighting styles, or beating up random people for their underwear. While the game unfortunately lacks a day-night cycle, it has visual filters to make it look exactly how you like it.
Somebody once told me the world is gonna roll me.
Coming into it, I didn't have high expectations for Akiba's trip on the Dead and Undressed, as the premise is just incredibly dumb. I originally added it to my wishlist purely based on the catchy title alone, and there it sat for years. In the end, it turned out to be a fascinating time capsule into a certain bygone era of anime fandom. Sometimes the game frustrates the player with the silliness of the story or the unfairness of a 10 vs 1 combat situation. In spite of some minor grievances, it's a great experience that can be tailored to your liking, whether it be the overall difficulty, the length of the game, or more minute details like what you're wearing or whether your waifu is actually an old man. Indeed, the customization alone won a special place in my heart, so if you're also into virtual cosplay, why not give the game a go? There's also a director's cut coming out in April, which will feature the Finnish Maid route alongside other extra content. So if you're interested in stripping vampires on the streets of Akihabara yourself, check the game out and enjoy the ride.